You just got your asses whipped by a bunch of goddamn nerds.
Brian, this is shot number 2 at our attempt at recording.
Take 2.
This week. Sorry to folks on the live stream and also who had expected us to be producing our podcast from the Tivoli Brew House, Tap House. It just wasn't working. It's too loud.
We did it.
We did it.
You just can't hear it.
No, you couldn't hear anything we said. I'm actually
It was a good conversation, though. You should have been there.
I know. Well, let's see if you can second that conversation today. Before Brian and I get going, of course, this is Sports Nerds. We're here recording together for the first time ever, maybe. I don't know if we've ever, minus yesterday, recorded in person together. It's always been.
No, we did a declaration that one time.
Oh,
But also didn't work.
Also didn't work. We just don't have the equipment. So
yeah, we're 0 for 2 or 0 for 3.
Sorry, everybody. We're on Instagram, at sports.nerds, and we're on Twitter, _sportsnerds. Before we get started, Brian, I wanted to roll off a couple stats that one of our P1s sent me. Colton Kraft, former student, sent me a tweet literally 15 minutes ago, and I thought that this was fantastic. Iowa has 5 AP top finishes since 2000, which is more than Clemson, Michigan, Nebraska, Tennessee, Florida State, Washington, Stanford, Notre Dame, Miami, and West Virginia. That's impressive, right? That's pretty solid there. It's the same as Wisconsin, Penn State, Auburn, and Virginia Tech. Yeah. So basically behind Alabama and Ohio State. So we're the 3rd best football program in the country.
It's one way to look at it.
Yeah. I guess Oklahoma's.
Another way to think about it is that you play in crappy bowl games that you can win, and that keeps you from getting booted out of the top 10.
Oh, we tend to lose most of our bowl games.
In the top 10?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because we lost to Stanford when McCaffrey ran for like a billion yards.
I don't think Iowa's a team that anybody wants to play. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. I don't think Iowa's a team anybody wants to play. I think they play spoiler.
Thanks for saying that.
Better than any team in football.
You're a good friend. And you have your Michigan shirt on.
They did Michigan, yeah. Got to rep the home team.
Because
Go blue.
I saw a wonderful meme. We are 16 days away from Michigan going 0-1. So they open up with Notre Dame. Here's another good one. At Notre Dame. Another good one before we get going.
You know how good that defense was last year?
It was great.
I don't think. We'll see.
Congratulations. I'm happy for you, I guess. I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't like Harbaugh. And he ruined the Big Ten's perfect bowl season by getting dismantled by South Carolina.
You're on video. Can you do a Harbaugh? Can you do a...
No, but I mean, you can. Go ahead. Let's see it.
I'm not wearing the khakis. Isn't this... Is that good?
That's pretty solid
really
right there.
Sticks his butt out there.
That's good.
I love Harbaugh.
Here's another stat.
Why is it so people hate Michigan so much? I don't get it.
Because they think they're better than they are. Over the last 15 years. They never should have fired Lloyd Carr and his bad breath. Known to have horrible breath, according to the sports reporters.
I don't have people tweeting me stats, but Michigan is...
They're the most winning. I think they're the winningest football program in history.
The games that Harbaugh's lost since he's gotten there, he's lost to Ohio State twice. He's lost to Michigan State twice, and I don't have this.
He's lost to Iowa every time.
It's by like a combined 7 points or something like that, right? I mean, sort of bad bounces against good teams. That team could have won a national championship.
Is that a stat that you can count? Like, do people give a shit? Like, you lost by 7 total points to all these teams? Here's a better one: Michigan homer against Iowa homer. Only 11 Power 5 football programs have never been on probation. Did I share this with you?
You sent me this one. This one I like.
BC, Boston College, Duke, Iowa, Louisville, Missouri, Northwestern, Purdue, Stanford, Vanderbilt, Wake Forest, and Washington State. So if you look at that list, there's only like 4 teams that aren't like super, super nerdy that are still safe. BC's like a great school. Is that correct? I mean, they're known to be a very, very good academic institution.
Yeah, it's a Jesuit school, right? It's a good school.
Oh, I did not know that.
I think so.
Interesting. You're a Jesuit professor.
I'm a former Jebby.
You were
not a priest, but I went to a Jesuit school. Yeah.
Was Mullen Jesuit?
No, Mullen is LaSallian.
Which is what? What's the difference between that and being a Jesuit?
It's just a different,
They're still very socially liberal, progressive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Shout out
very
to
social justicey.
All right.
My high school football team was really good too.
Really? Oh yeah.
Also has a
for sure, they have the same M
logo.
So does Mines, right? Isn't it the same M as Mines? I think it's the same font.
M's look alike.
M's are for men. Masculinity. I got nothing. All right. Speaking of men, let's talk about this beanball situation that happened. We talked about this yesterday, but some things have kind of unfolded over the last 24 hours. It's been great. So Wednesday night, Brian and I were sitting down watching this game. Jose Urena beans Ronald Acuna Jr. First pitch, bottom of the first inning against the Braves. So Acuna is a Brave. Now, I guess watching it, the breakdown immediately was, did he do it on purpose? Yada yada yada. So, but what is really unfolded? If any of you want to go down and hunt down this video, it's I don't know, it's a blatant beanball. He didn't go for his head, hit him in the elbow, but it's kind of all over the sports medias today and yesterday. Urania got a 6-game suspension for it,
Which for a starting pitcher means
nothing.
Yeah.
Well, he missed a start. I was trying to figure that out. He'll
yeah.
miss one start. Okay, but they're not going to send it. They'll be able to bring a guy up. How's that work, actually, in Major League Baseball? Can you bring a dude up if you get a guy suspended?
I assume you can.
Yeah, for sure. Otherwise, the Mariners will be playing without a... What position does, what's his name, play now? The guy who cheated for the Mariners? Robinson Cano? What position? Is he second baseman still?
Yeah. Well,
they moved him to the outfield.
Oh, actually, when he moved over there, I thought maybe there was talk of moving him to shortstop or something, but I don't know. I don't watch a lot of Mariners baseball.
It's hard to watch.
Michigan is in the Eastern time zone, as our airport will remind people over and over again, because everyone thinks it's in the Central.
Yeah.
So we don't watch a lot of Mariners games because it starts at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, that is pretty late. Those are late games. I don't mind them. I can stay up and watch some Dodgers ball. So, my take on it, I know your take is, I'll just get it started. I'm more or less pissed off by Keith Hernandez and the defenders of Urania in the fallout. Hernandez's interview, I don't know, who was it with? Was he being interviewed by Buster Olney, or Buster Olney was using the audio? And anyhow, Brian and I were listening to the Baseball Tonight podcast this morning, and Hernandez has not at all backed off his comments about this just being part of the game, and that Urania had every reason to hit Acuna. Now, I didn't clarify this. Acuna got hit because he hit 4 home runs in the previous 2 games against the Marlins, and so they decided to bean him, right? Or Urania did. Apparently, he's taking full responsibility for it. I see it as extremely archaic, and Joe Madden does too. So props to Joe. He came out and said something about Neanderthal. Did he call this is the game has become Neanderthalian or something like that? Like he used a big word, very Joe Madden style. I thought it was dumb.
I've never even tried to use Neanderthal as an adjective.
I probably just made it up. We have our computers on us. We could probably look it up. The old dictionary app there on our MacBooks. Yeah. I think it's silly. I think it's dumb. I think that why are you throwing at a guy just because he hit home runs? No, that's my take. You go ahead. You're the one who's more articulate. Let's hear your defense of Keith Hernandez, who, by the way, is known to be a complete asshole. So go ahead.
All right. Well, let's start with the defense of Keith Hernandez. He was in that Seinfeld episode, or episodes, and that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Who does this guy think he is? I'm Keith Hernandez.
I'm Keith Hernandez.
He's also in the Just for Men commercials. Putting some dye in his mustache. So I don't know why you'd have any problem with a character like Keith Hernandez. We have to back up a little bit, because I still am not sure that we can say, obviously Major League Baseball thinks he threw at him on purpose. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given him a suspension, right? But the pitcher says after the game, yeah, I didn't throw at him on purpose. Usually when you plunk a guy, it doesn't happen in the first inning or the first at bat. You do it kind of later in the game, or wait for a situation that, is less likely to be bad for you in terms of winning or losing the game, right? There is good reason to think, there are some arguments as to why maybe he did throw at him on purpose, and those are that Acuna hit, 3 or 4 home runs in the preceding 2 or 3 games?
4 home runs.
And 2 of them were leadoffs, is that right? He hit 2 leadoff home runs. The day before they played a doubleheader, and he hit a leadoff home run in both of those games. So maybe it was, this was kind of Hernandez's take. I'm going to plunk this guy because that way he definitely won't, he won't hit a home run. If I plunk him, that's for sure going to happen, So I don't know. He says he didn't throw at him on purpose. It's kind of a weird situation to throw at somebody. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Let me ask you a question. Okay. Do you care that he threw at him in general? Right? Because it's not like the first time someone's been thrown at in baseball this year, and it's not the last time someone's going to get thrown at intentionally. If we were to go back and change the conditions slightly and say he threw at him and he hit him in the thigh and it didn't hit his elbow and the guy didn't have to leave the game, do you care then?
I guess it depends upon the situation. To me, I'm okay with the occasional beaning of a dude. And you and I talked about this off air. There are situations in which you need that kind of, I guess, internal police force, policing of players, dudes getting too cocky or stuff like that. And I get that, I'm totally down with that, I guess. But in this situation, I thought it was just silly because you're hitting a guy for talent.
Yeah.
He wasn't, even in how he responded to being hit, He didn't charge the
That's
mound.
true.
He was very, very respectful of everything. Very mature for a very young, super, super talented player, by the way. I guess, and that's it. To me, that does not warrant being hit.
No, it's weird, and that's the other reason. I think that kind of what you just said maybe proves my point a little bit, that we can be at least somewhat suspicious about whether or not he tagged him on purpose. Because usually, if you hit a guy, they've done something pretty obvious that warrants it, right? You plowed somebody over, or you slid into second with your cleats up, or you hit a home run and you trotted real slow around the
Steal
bases,
a base when you're up by 10.
Stealing a base late in a game when you're winning by a lot, a big bat flip, right? Like those are the things that tend to get you pegged. Just hitting a bunch of home runs doesn't seem to me to warrant I'm going to throw a 100 mile an hour fastball.
Are you turning on this? Are you turning yesterday you were all about defending.
Well, I'm saying like there's a lot of reasons to think that maybe he didn't throw the ball at him on purpose.
I did hear
that.
Did you?
Some pitchers, when they do it, they'll be like, yeah.
But
yes, I threw at that guy.
But
then they take the suspension.
He said he didn't.
He said he didn't.
But it was also the fastest first pitch he's thrown all season.
Well, he's just excited
about just hitting him. Yeah, he got okay. Thank you. Yes, he got very, very excited.
You played a lot of baseball. It's hard to peg somebody with a curveball, or you got to throw a fastball.
I wasn't any good at baseball.
No one ever threw it at you?
No, I had a hard enough time throwing a strike, let alone hitting a guy in the elbow.
I don't want to defend this. I don't think like that. Violence for the sake of violence is good inside of baseball, but I do kind of like the what you call it, that internal police force. I like that the custom of baseball is that instead of an umpire or some official or Major League Baseball coming down and trying to sort stuff out between different teams or rivalries or different players that don't like each other, that you can kind of take care of that on the field, right? I think if you hit a bomb and you trot around and you show up a pitcher, you probably know that there's an okay chance that you're going to get plunked, and that usually ends it, right? It's usually tit for tat, and that's the end of it. Obviously, there are situations where it escalates and it gets worse and worse, and you do need suspensions, and you do have warnings from the umpire and stuff like that. But I'm just generally speaking okay with that sort of internal policing mechanism that baseball has, because we can contrast it with football, for example, that doesn't want anybody showboating. That when you score a big touchdown, they regulate these the celebrations in crazy ways, which why don't you just let people figure it out on the field, right? If someone scores a big touchdown on you and you're going to rub their face in it, you should probably know that next time you come over the middle, you might get popped by a safety or something like that. I'm okay with that happening on the field, and I just deep down don't think that there's really it probably doesn't feel good to get hit with a baseball in your butt, but if you're doing it right, you're not throwing at somebody's head, you're not trying to end their career, you're not trying to take away their livelihood and their money, you're just trying to hit them in the thick part and send a message.
Okay, I'm going to ask you two questions then that are obviously tied to this. Making or excusing this act by saying it's just part of the game, are you okay with that? Are you okay with that excuse? With that defense?
In the scheme of in the larger scheme of things, I've seen more clearly warranted acts of internal regulation, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, that guy's going to get thrown at the next time they play, or tomorrow, or whatever. Or the next time that he comes up to bat, he better be looking for, something inside. In this case, we kind of gone back. It doesn't seem to be any real obvious bat flipping or that sort of stuff. So I don't get this one, and I'm not defending this one. But generally, I'm okay with the stuff kind of being, and there's a lot more of those kind of unwritten rules in baseball too. We were talking about those guys that we were on the golf course with. Who was that pitcher from Atlanta? You remember from Oakland rather, who got all pissed at Derek Jeter for running across his. Alex Rodriguez hits a infield. He gets a grounder to first base and he's out. And when he runs back across the infield, he ran over the mound, which apparently is like disrespectful to come up on the mound or something like that. There's all these weird sort of inside-y baseball sort of things that I kind of dig that baseball sorts those things out for themselves, and you don't have to, have some external arbiter come in and sort it out for them. I'm okay with that sort of that cultural part of baseball.
It's funny that this situation, we both agree, is very different from the usual situations in which people get hit. But it's being used to have a much larger conversation about these old school approaches to baseball and these kind of old school rules. And I wanted to ask you, is this just another example of the chasm between the traditional baseball fan, the traditional baseball culture, and what baseball or modern fans want it to be. I mean, I think this is just one example of the fact the game it's losing out on a lot of fans just because it's a little too old school sometimes. You know, it's a little too...
Deep down to me, it just seems like it's a sportsmanship question that,
Okay.
you know, it's the same stuff that you would teach your kids when they're playing baseball that, you know, act like you've been there, don't rub it in, don't run up the score, that sort of stuff. And that's just baseball's way of kind of policing it, right? I mean, as a fan, I'm sure you've felt this before. You know, I'm a big Red Sox fan. You know, we got embarrassed by Houston in Game 1 of the second or first round last year, whatever it was. And as a fan, I was like, man, I know Houston has, you know, they were bad for a long time and they were really excited, but the celebration seemed crazy to me for a Game 1. And in my mind, I was like, that is a playoff series. You're probably not going to chuck at anybody. But if you did that, you know, in a regular season, oh my, like the celebration seemed excessive, and it's, you know, it doesn't feel good to have your face rubbed in it.
That's a really good example to bring up too, because I guess I'm seeing I'm having this internal conflict about what I want the game to be as a diehard baseball fan, because the Astros, who were winning at such a clip last year, were fun to watch and people enjoyed it. And even then, winning the World Series, I think people were totally on board with it. The tide has really turned this season in terms of how fans view the Astros. There are not a lot of Astros fans out there because of the same stuff that you're pointing out. They don't act like they've been there before. They're really, really cocky. They're very off-putting.
Yeah, I mean, individual players have come out.
This is not about race either, by the way, because I mean, there are white dudes on that team that are just as off-putting as, you know.
Who was it for the Astros who came out and was talking a bunch of crap about the Cubs, like before the season started, right? Oh, that Cubs team, you know, should have been way better than they were, and they really kind of sucked, and we're way better than them, and they could have been a dynasty, and, you know, we kicked their ass, blah 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 blah. And it's like, oh, wow, one World Series,
and the one dude who called
after a decade of just being everybody's doormat. I mean, they were so bad,
terrible.
You go back to what, 2003 was when they were good. Was that the Bees, Killer Bees?
05. Yeah, the White Sox swept them, didn't they, in the World Series?
Yeah, so I mean, legitimately, over 10 years of them just being awful, miserably bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's there was something else. They had the one guy, I can't remember, Craig. Anyhow, some player.
Biggio?
No. He's on the team now, who was complaining about the umpires to the media, which is a no-no. Like, you let your manager do that. You don't throw yourself out there to do that. But
which is, by the way, that you just touched on another sort of unwritten rule in baseball, right? Like, we always know, if you watch a lot of baseball, you know that hitters are constantly turning around and saying things to the umpire like, "Hey, I thought that was outside" or something. But you don't. You're trying to make it look like you could be saying, "Oh, what are you going to do this weekend?" You know, like they do it really with little affectation, right? There's not hand gestures and gesticulations. You don't even really turn around and sort of square to the umpire. You just kind of whisper it to him, and that's that same thing of showing them up, right? That's unacceptable. You know, umpires will let you voice your opinion a little bit, but once you know, it's the same thing. You hit a home run off a guy and you trot real slow, and make him sort of have to sit there through it. You know, that's disrespectful, or it's seen as disrespectful. The same is true, you know, you don't turn around and show up an umpire. So it's, again, those unwritten rules that get kind of policed internally.
That people are starting to not like, though. I mean, I think that's it's becoming off-putting to people. Speaking of another Fisher in the traditional baseball arena, last week, Jason Worth, former, what did we decide? Obviously a Philly. He was great as a Philly. I believe he won a World Series as a Philly, then took a huge contract and went over to the Nationals.
I think he played with the Nationals the longest.
He did, yeah. I mean, he was great. I mean, you pulled up some of his stats, and you have them right there. But I just wanted to, real quick before I hand it off to you, he came out and in the same way that Goose Gossage did it a few years ago, basically attacked advanced statistics and sabermetricians and all of this in an interview that he did for some podcast that was not ours, so you probably have no reason to listen to it.
Come on, Jason.
But
did you see him? He was playing like some pickup baseball game.
No,
it's
I didn't.
Just like some beer league baseball game, just crushed out.
Just killing it.
So I kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean that's cool.
Funny.
I mean, I'm sure he's not a bad guy. It's just, again, this perception of how the game is played now, or how outsiders are influencing the game. And his quote was, "I think it's killing the game." And here he's talking about advanced statistics. It's to the point where we could just put computers out there, just put laptops and what have you, just put them out there and let them play. We don't even need to go out there anymore. It's a joke. I guess, to me, his criticism of the sabermetrician or the sabermetric era, this advanced statistic era, is not necessarily, to me, I guess it's more, as I'm reading this and going through and kind of parsing through his interview and his comments, it's way more tied to that same perspective, oh, these kids aren't doing anything anymore, they're just inside playing video games, than it really is maybe as a threat to the game. I guess to me, like in going through and reading the story last night and reading more of the commentary about it, he's just being kind of an ass in terms of this. But I mean, what's yours? This is the weird thing, right? I think we talked about this yesterday. A dude like Jason Wirth, his entire career, especially the last 5 or 6 years, that contract he gets from the Nationals is only made possible because of advanced statistics. They know his worth, like because in terms of batting average, RBI, and HR, he's not that fantastic of a player. But in terms of the value, the WAR that he brings to a team, he's invaluable. He played till he was 38 and put up great numbers. And so it just seems kind of ironic that he would critique the nerds who are making his career possible.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, how many front offices would keep a 38-year-old around? Yeah. Just the fact that you're 38, I think most front offices would be like, well, it's probably time to bring up a prospect who can, there's a billion outfielders in every farm system anyways. We'll bring up a young kid and get him some at-bats and stuff like that. No, they say we can still find value in a player like Jason Wirth, even though his age is kind of a red flag. So, yeah, I think you're right about that. My biggest problem with his argument, truthfully, is if you boil it down and strip it down, the premise of his argument is people who play baseball, right, at a high level, a high professional level, are more knowledgeable about what it takes to win baseball games and the skills and techniques that you use than are people who have never played baseball, right? That's really what he's saying. He's like, oh, we're bringing in these dorks who have economics degrees or whatever who, stopped playing baseball in Little League like I did, for example, right? But the problem with that argument is if it's true, like we make this mistake all the time. We think because someone's really good at doing something, they're also really good at teaching people to do that thing or managing them, right? How many managers were really insanely good baseball players?
Not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Cora, I mean, he played Major League Ball, but he wasn't that, he wasn't an everyday player.
Well, I mean, look at the great managers that we consider as part of this moment, like Joe Torre or Mike Socia, right? They're backup catchers. Right? I mean, well, they played. They were, Socia was good, but and they both had good careers, but still, they are handling the ball. Like I guess their relationship to how the game is played from that position is different than any other position out there, right? And I mean, why is that? Because they have to know everything. They have to study film on guys. They may have not called it advanced statistics, but their understanding, their knowledge of the game is so much deeper than an outfielder.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect, but if you're an outfielder, you don't have to have the book on every single hitter who comes up and know where to pitch.
And then your manager's telling you where to move anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Nowadays, I keep seeing outfielders just pulling out the card.
Oh,
they write it
no,
down.
I've not seen that.
Oh, it's pretty funny. It's like, oh, this guy's up. Where am I supposed to stand? Okay, I'll stand over here.
Oh my
So they don't even have to give him the signs anymore.
There's just some.
Yeah, but the fundamentally, his premise is flawed, right? That because you're not a professional level baseball player, that you can't understand what makes for a good baseball player, or what makes for a good team, or what makes for a good organization. And this Guardian article that we found, I don't know if you posted this, really kind of dissects and demolishes the argument that Wirth is trying to make by saying, hey, look, the proof is in the pudding, right? If all this analytics stuff is wrong, then how come all these teams that are heavily invested in it keep winning, right? Does that make sense? And whoever wrote this Guardian article also makes this point, which is this argument is so settled that you don't even get a response from the front offices who use a bunch of advanced analytics, or from the sabermetricians themselves. Like they're like, we're not even going to engage this conversation with you. Like, this has been decided years ago, right? That you complain about it is truthfully meaningless. And the third thing I'll say about this is that Jason Wirth kind of makes this argument like when you use advanced stats, that the players aren't allowed to be creative and use their imaginations, and that sort of stuff. And I just think that that's fundamentally not true. That unfortunately, a lot of people's reads of advanced analytics are that, like, they cracked the code and now everybody knows how to play baseball better. But that's not how it works, because the game constantly evolves, right? So you have to continue to develop different measures to try and figure out where you can find value in players, or in techniques on the field, or in lineups and that sort of stuff. So it's pushing the game, right? Like, one really good example of this is the sort of launch angle data that we're getting, that players are getting now, and the speed that they're hitting balls out of the ballpark. For a long time, squaring up the ball was sort of what was preached, right? Hitting, and this is still true. Like, hitting a ball hard is good. If you hit a ball hard, a player's average on balls hit hard is much higher than if you don't get all of it. But truthfully, if you want to hit home runs, you don't want to square it up. You want to get underneath it a little bit, right? You want to hit the bottom half of the ball and have a better launch angle that's gonna throw the ball, right? Does that make sense?
It does.
It's not just contact and the speed that the ball comes off the bat. That's not the whole story. You have to have launch angle as well. And I wouldn't call that necessarily an advanced metric, but it's certainly an evolution in the way that we think about hitting and teach hitting and that sort of stuff. And truthfully, man, that's something that a guy like Jason Worth probably, he hit a lot of home runs. He hit almost 300 home runs in his career.
It's funny how that shift or that evolution in hitting has muted the argument that hitters just aren't good anymore because they strike out more. I mean, and I think that if we did some sort of discursive analysis of how often media talking heads brought up strikeouts, you'd see a massive decrease over the last 18 months, because I think we very quickly realized that these dudes aren't striking out because they're not good hitters. They're striking out because of the launch angle, and they're realizing that risk reward comparison is just totally different.
You're right about that.
They're good hitters.
They definitely are. Sean Foreman, who we had on the show, the guy who started Baseball Reference and now Basketball Reference and Hockey Reference and Cricket Reference. I don't know why I'm making that joke. I love his sites and I love Sean Foreman. He took some dude to task after he was on our show about this very question, where they were fighting about a particular player. I think it was like Mark Reynolds or something like or some Mark Reynolds-esque player. There's a bunch of those dudes floating around, like Chris Davis, for example. And I can't make the argument as well as Sean Foreman did. You can go find it on his Twitter. But basically what he said is exactly what you said, that there's this old school mentality that striking out is the worst possible outcome. And it's not, right?
Right.
If there's people on base, hitting into a double play is a worse outcome than a strikeout, right? So if you look at a guy like Mark Reynolds, who's got a bunch of strikeouts, and say, oh, that guy strikes out a ton. Sure, but his OPS and OPS plus are super duper high, and he doesn't create a lot of outs, and he adds a lot of value. Like we have blinders that advanced analytics help us understand. I mean, for a long time, baseball was in the Stone Age, where we thought things like strikeouts and average and wins were valuable measures of an individual's contribution to a baseball team's success. And what we know now is that those things are far less important, right? Like this is an example from a different sport that's always bothered me. If a quarterback gets credit for a touchdown for anything that they throw, right? Anything that's a forward pass. If you throw a 40-yard, strike to the corner of the end zone and a player makes a good catch, I get that. You should get credit for that. But if you throw like a 1-yard dinker and a guy runs for 50 yards and breaks 3 tackles, those look equal on the stats. They're not equal, right?
Well, think about the dropped passes. Like dropped passes. Yeah. You hit a guy in the hands and he can't catch it.
Yeah. And so players get, when we have old school statistics, players get credit for things that they shouldn't get credit for, and they also get blamed for things that aren't their fault. Another fantastic measure is interceptions, right? Over the course of the football season, we'll definitely talk about who's got the most interceptions, touchdown to interception ratio, et cetera. In my opinion, if a quarterback throws a ball and the receiver touches it, and then it's tipped up, and that shouldn't even be an interception.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? Like that's not on the quarterback, but we see those things as equal, right? It doesn't say 12 interceptions and 12 half interceptions or whatever. It's just like the total number of interceptions. Well, that's a poor way of thinking about whether or not someone's making an impact on your team's ability to have success. All advanced analytics, it's not trying to change the game. There have been some changes, right? But I think in a lot of ways, some of them are really cool. When we tried to record yesterday, we talked about the sort of changes that were ushered in by Joe Madden to sort of get more aggressive on the base paths. For a long time, conventional wisdom was, you should go station to station, and some dork in a library somewhere was like, actually, if we do the math, being more aggressive and going first to third will create more runs over a season or something like that. Or when we saw in the playoffs last year, the way Terry Francona was using Andrew Miller, using his closer in the 4th inning or the 6th inning or the 7th inning in the most high leverage spot. Those are all things that were created by advanced analytics that disprove the point that Jason Worth is trying to make. That's really creative and imaginative. What's not imaginative is relying on old conventional wisdom that turns out just to not be true.
It's funny that people bust the balls of all these players or coaches who take this advanced analytic approach, but who's doing the winning across all these sports? It's for the most part managers, coaches, GMs who are employing this. And I think, look at Belichick, right? Look at Nick Saban, like being able to just switch out a quarterback in the middle of a national title game.
Yeah.
Like that's because Like but he also
That was crazy.
He knows
Who's starting this year for them.
I don't,
Is it Jalen Hurd or is it the other guy? It's got to be the other guy.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know. They haven't decided yet. But I mean, that kind of stuff.
Jalen Hurd's so fun to watch, though.
Agree. But I mean, these dudes know what they're doing. They're great coaches, yes, because of their ability to manage personnel and all this stuff. But they're also great coaches because they're using these tools that they have recognized as extremely valuable, and they're just deploying them. I mean, why is Tom Brady still good at 41 years old or however? I mean, because he's put into a system where his arm strength and his accuracy are, not his arm strength, just mostly his accuracy. Those are the most valuable tools that he has, and Belichick finds ways in order to integrate those tools into play calling. Just in the same way that Saban would do it, whether he had Jalen Hurd or that other guy in there.
Yeah.
I can't. The Hawaiian, is he Hawaiian? Simone?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. I
I
don't
can't
know.
remember his name. That was
But think about Popovich, right? Like the same. I know we may not get to the other salacious material, but the Spurs have overperformed for how many out of the last 15 years? I mean, they've overperformed. Because Popovich is very, very good at understanding his players' strengths.
Is this year the first time they haven't made the playoffs in
Yeah,
forever?
yeah.
It seems like
18
anyways.
years, I
Yeah.
think.
Wow.
Yeah. But I mean, with shit talent this year, I mean, they're not shit talent. I mean, they're still good.
Just
but
a bunch of old dudes.
yes, right. But to still
So
be
Jason Worth could probably go play there because Pop is not afraid to put 40 and 50-year-old men.
very,
out there.
very true. Or the Warriors, right? Look at the Warriors. Being able to just take advantage of shooting, right, and just shoot people out of the gym, just because they built a team around that,
Yeah.
and realized that's the shift the game was making.
Yeah, man, that's a whole other fight and a whole other conversation. But it blows my mind when people hate on Golden State because the way to describe that team, yeah, first and foremost, they can shoot you out of the gym all the time and any time. The way they match up blows my mind. If you think about this, go back and look at the Western Conference Finals against the Rockets, where they did not play a center. Right, JaVale McGee played like 4 minutes in that 7-game series.
Yeah,
right. Because Houston was going small, so they're like, fine, we'll go small. And then we get to the finals, and JaVale McGee played a ton of minutes and was super impactful, right? So there's one old school way of thinking about this, which is I'm going to, come up with the best lineup possible, and I'm going to play that no matter what. And I think that I'm certain there's some stat heads at Golden State that say, no, right? Like JaVale McGee is not always useful, right? Against some lineups, we have to have him in there. Against other ones, put him on the bench.
Being able to just coach like that or strategize like that and not caring about what fans think or what the media thinks or traditionalists think, that's pretty impressive. Hey, we're not going to get to our last two stories just because we got to keep it short for our listeners, but maybe next week we'll get into the Maryland football thing and then these Yankees jerseys. But it was a joy recording in person today.
Oh my
gosh, we'll have to try to do it before you head back to Flint. But everybody
pound out 20 podcasts.
Yeah, 20
podcasts,
podcasts, right? So we could make sure you find us on the socials. Tell your friends about us. Our podcast is available everywhere, and we need a few more YouTube subscribers to customize our page. I think we're at 90 right now, which is good. People actually watch our YouTube videos. Last week we had like 45 views, which is wild. I think we're onto something. Yeah. Tell your friends about us
Subscribe,
so that way they can get onto it too.
But,
and then lastly, make sure you sign up for the old EPL Pick'em. It should be fun. Thanks everybody for listening and have a fantastic weekend.